the whole movement, because anyone who ran had to have the feeling that he had a reasonable chance of winning once in a while. The insurance program probably was the most valuable thing that ever happened to us, because it allowed us to say that you must do this, you must do that, you must comply with these standards in order to be eligible for insurance, and without the insurance they couldn't run the race. It probably gave us our strongest start as far as expansion and growth of the sport is concerned of anything that's happened. And we found that there were a lot of available unused airport runways around the country, most of which belong to the government as former military sites, but none were accessible to us unless we could come up with reasonable limits of liability insurance. And initially, no insurance company wanted to even think about getting involved with something as wild as what we were suggesting. We were able to get one of the insurance companies from a major company to come up to our track up at Inyokern, California in the desert and attend one race and see it. And his recommendation then opened the door for our getting our own insurance program with a major underwriter, and it went on from there.
In the April issue of the Hot Rod Magazine 1951, why I read about Wally Park starting the National Hot Rod Association, and it was several months after that, probably around August the 1st or so, that I sent him my $2 and became a member, and still a member today. In 1956, I did become a regional advisor for the National Hot Rod Association and started recruiting members and trying to build racetracks and that type of thing. And most of the time we went on our own nickel, done the work without any expense money or anything else. Well, it was just strictly voluntary help, and you just did it for the love of the sport is what made us all do it, and still doing it today, more or less.
Once we had the organization underway and the word had spread around the country and the enthusiasm was there, we had to expand the representation that we had in the field. So we began by selecting individuals and appointing them as regional advisors. And it was a no-salary job, people who were active with car clubs, and they'd be people who had their own cars and had built cars, not necessarily race cars, but cars that were specialized.
At one of the Stout Field drag races over on the airport here is where I met Wally Parks. And out of that, he knew my interest, and I think he was looking for somebody in Ohio, and we had the clubs going and trying to get the Timing Association going, and the main thing we needed was help that Wally could give us as far as organization goes. And Wally and Barbara put together a tremendous book that gave us this assistance, and I still have mine here. I doubt if there's many of them in existence, but it went back to how to form a club, how to get the guys together, how to work with the public officials, how to do everything, and it was really the NHRA Drag Racers Bible at that time.
Back then, dedication was the thing. I think everybody at the time, besides having a love affair with the automobile, they had a love affair with Wally and Barbara for getting this thing cranked off. In fact, I wanted to go to work so bad for NHRA, I created my own job to get paid by NHRA. I created my own job in a auto supply place where they were paying me to do NHRA's work.
We started making selections from among the more outstanding representatives that we had out there, and started forming our division directors system. Along with the addition of permanent division directors in the early 1960s, we were fortunate to be able to bring Jack Hart into our organization, who eventually became the executive director and later vice president. Jack was a man highly respected in Southern California for his activity with clubs and as an active racer. His influence and his knowledge in engineering, mechanics, and administration went a long way toward building the course that NHRA would eventually take. One of the other requirements with a division director was that his wife also had to be enthusiastic and actively involved, because we knew they'd be traveling around the country, and if their wife didn't understand and wasn't enthusiastic about what they were doing, well, it would be a tough role. We used to say that it really wasn't the division director that we hired. We hired their wife and we got them along with it because the ladies just performed tremendous detail work for us all the way through. In some cases, I think much of the credit of progress can be given to wives of division directors.
The wife I have, my wife Polly, worked hand in hand with me, type letters, go to the races, whether it was sell tickets at the gate or run the clocks in the tower or whatever. She was always willing to do it. We sacrificed a lot of the other things, maybe for our kids and for our own home, so we could go to the next race.
Well, I think Wally had a plan, and it certainly the proof is right here at Raceway Park of what his long-range theories were and what he wanted to accomplish. And in effect, he had some teams strategically located across the country that involved the division director in this case and our helpmates. I don't think that I could have accomplished nearly what I've been able to do in the division or any place else within HRA without the help of my wife Eileen.
Barbara has been involved in the association since the day it was formed. At that time, she had just gone to work as secretary on the Hot Rod magazine staff and was told during her first week that she was there that she might have to do a little extra typing because we've just formed a new national association. But she was actively involved from day one, and ultimately, in addition to being in charge of the production of our publications and programs and printed materials for years and years. She was assigned the responsibility of directing the International Car Club Association and operated that until we transferred it to Detroit. But she's been a very vital and very active part of the organization right from the very start, and was very influential in the selection of the divisional representatives and the members of the personnel that we had. Tough critic sometimes, but really played a tremendous role. It was kind of a behind-the-scenes role and accomplished a lot of things that probably I got credit for in later years.
I don't know that was a prerequisite for the job, but everybody that came on board was married, and all the gals, you could probably write a book about what they did and the sacrifices that they made. One thing about it, they certainly raised the children. None of the guys at the time could claim any thing for how they turned out because we were all on the road at the time. But and everybody says, you know, how is this going to ever survive? But everybody did.
But each one of them had some outstanding circumstances in their background that made them qualified for the position. But each one of them gave up something that was much more financially rewarding in order to take on the opportunity of becoming a representative in this particular sport.
The modern high-performance industry was developed essentially in the late 1940s following the conclusion of World War II. It started primarily on the dry lake beds in Southern California where a band of hardy racers, individuals like Roy Richter of Krager Enterprises, Vic Edelbrock, Paul Schieffer, Stuart Hilborn, people like this were very competitive racers on the dry lake beds at that time. They all developed special products, special high performance, better performing products with greater longevity. And in a very quick time, they found that their business had grown to the point that they were no longer able to race. They were full-time automobile aftermarket manufacturers.
1934, I came to California with my parents, and we were living in an apartment across the street from where Vic Sr. had a shop. Being young and curious, when I wandered over there, and I started sweeping floors and washing parts and just whatever he had me do, and eventually worked up to where I could maybe grind valves or take things apart or help put things back together, change batteries and what have you. But even in those days, Vic Sr. was very enthused over competition and performance.
My dad got going before the war, and he was involved in running his Roadster in 1939, 1940, 41 at the Dry Lake beds where Edwards Air Force Base is located now. He was one of the loaners that worked with the V8 Ford Flathead. Everybody else in those days was working with a four-cylinder Chevy and stuff like that, so he was kind of a pioneer in using that engine, and they all kind of laughed at him a little bit. He realized that there was a need for a manifold in the late 30s, and I believe it was in 1939, 1940, he built his first two-carburetor manifold for that engine. Right after the war, he'd set up a small garage-type operation and then a very small type of machine shop, a couple drill presses, a milling machine. And he produced manifolds for the flathead and also made his first flathead cylinder head.
The manifold and the development of it was all done on Lakes Racing, every bit of it. In those days, we had no dyno, we had nothing, so all of it was done strictly at the Dry Lakes.
We were all tinkerers. There's no doubt about that. I was in service in the Air Force. During that time, though, there was a lot of time that you had on your hands with nothing to do, and it was during that period that I drew up the first fuel injector. I had run enough with what I had been using to realize that I wasn't really happy with it. There was nothing else available to purchase, so you had to make it yourself. And when I got out in 1946, I immediately started building the first unit. That unit in the streamlined car ran pretty good. We still had some development work to do, so I would switch back and forth between the carburetors and the injector as I developed the injector. Finally, we got things so it was working really, really well. And we broke the record. It was the first car to ever break 150 miles an hour at the Dry Lakes. By then, I'd had a number of requests from people that had seen the injector run that wanted to apply it to other types of racing. And I think that was probably the very beginning of the whole thing as far as the commercial application of the injector as far as racing is concerned.
As the racing activities spread across the country, primarily as the result of the transition from the dry lake beds to quarter-mile drag strips, many of the manufacturers found that they simply weren't able to keep up with the demand, and they found the necessity for another link in the chain of distribution. And that link became the mom-and-pop speed shop.
Obviously, it was a thrill for a young kid to go to the Dry Lakes for the first time and see what these guys were doing with their cars. And this was back in 1940, before the war. It was just incredible to see what these guys were doing with the old four-cylinder Fords and the beginning of the V8s and everything. It was just a great experience.
I came in a little later than that, right after the war, about 1945. And it was a thrilling experience. I felt like the Fonz. Was up there in the Dry Lakes, had my car, and I had a number on the side of it, and we'd run against time to get that high time. Felt pretty good. Felt pretty hot.
There was a speed shop during the war, and I just love that name, Speed Shop. That was what it was all about in those days. Of course, now we try to call it specialty equipment, but it was Speed Shop in those days. And so as soon as I got out of the service, I started one of them. I said, I got to have a speed shop. So I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about anything except hot rodding, and I just felt that the business would grow after the war, and so I opened one in 1946, March of 1946.
I started in a similar way, but in 1949. I had worked for this other manufacturer, hot rod equipment manufacturer, and in 49 opened a speed shop in Hollywood. I think it was the only speed shop in Hollywood. And we were only over the hill from each other, handling the same kind of racing equipment, building engines, And we both, Alex was in it before I was, but we both had mail order businesses where we would run ads in hot rod magazines and other publications and ship parts